Start Here 6, Historical Erasure, Part 1. If you wish to oppress a people, one of the most important steps you must take is to rewrite, appropriate, or completely erase the history of that people. You can't oppress a people who don't even exist, and even if they did, you're the one rewriting their history, so they're the ones oppressing you, actually. Historical erasure is by no means unique to Palestine. If anything, it's kind of a universal requirement of oppression. So just as an example, if you're in North America, where were you when you first heard about the Tulsa Race Massacre? How much do you really know about the details of the Mexican-American War? How old were you when you finally found out what a true piece of shit Columbus was? Erasure is a necessary aspect of ethnic cleansing. There are many different kinds of erasure. We are going to start by looking at a very visible example of it, which is Wikipedia vandalism. So do me a favor and go to any significant Wikipedia page discussing Palestinian history and then click on its Talk tab. 9 times out of 10, you will see this warning: active arbitration remedies. This is not a particularly common warning, and it is usually reserved for unfolding events. So certainly you might expect it on the Wikipedia page for Arab-Israeli conflict, but not on every historical page related to that region. Just today, I found it on History of Palestine, Timeline of the Palestinian Region, State of Palestine, Timeline of the name Palestine, just Palestine parentheses region. These and literally countless other examples on just this one website can generally be traced back to a propaganda push from about 12 years ago where a bunch of workshops were held specifically to train Zionists on how to effectively vandalize Wikipedia articles with misinformation and propaganda. Here is a clip from one of those workshops.
The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
That man, the head of that workshop, Naftali Bennett, eventually became the Prime Minister of Israel. And that is just one of many examples of how Zionist antics fuel anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Because all of that sounded so outlandish, it doesn't seem like it could be true. And yet, it is a real thing that they did and continue to do today, all for the purpose of Palestinian erasure. In that same vein, objectively, the Israeli government has jurisdiction over all the archaeological sites in the region and a basic monopoly over the majority of the academic study of the history of this region, making it extremely difficult to find good faith scholarship discussing those subjects. But it is out there, and we're going to go over a couple of common myths using those archaeological studies. First, the name Palestine. It is a very common Zionist claim that the Romans invented Palestine in the early Christian era, roughly around 70 CE. There is no data whatsoever that would support this claim. The first evidence we have of the name Palestine comes from the wall of an Egyptian tomb in about 1200 BCE. It's Semitic, so it's a bunch of consonants, PLST, which we refer to as the Peliset tribe. Fun fact. That is where the Gazan journalist Plestia gets her name. After that, we have in ancient Akkadian, Assyrian, we have in Hebrew, various versions of it like Peleset and Pelesti and Philisti and Philistini and Peleshtim, which is where we get things like Philistine and Philistia in the Bible. Like if you've heard Arabs say Anadami Philistini, that Philistini is the same as Philistine in the Bible. You've also got Herodotus, around 400 BCE, first known historian. He writes down the name of the land as Palestine and describes a much broader swath of land than the much more mythologized version described later in the Greek Bible. And that is where the Romans got the name of their administrative district. Sometimes the name of the land would change, but it would always go back to Palestine or Philistine. Most notably, when the Muslim conquests came through around 600s, they generally used the locals' name for the land, and the locals still called it Palestine. Another extremely common Zionist claim is Palestine was never a country. This is because countries are kind of a new idea. There were many countries you know today that were not countries in 1948, but honestly, the continued existence of a region called Palestine throughout the millennia is fairly unique. That's not very common. And we have many, 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 many maps from throughout the centuries referring to the region as Palestine or Philistine, because it has always been a vibrant and thriving trade hub in one of the most trafficked portions of the world. There was a Philistine Pentapolis. It was on the Silk Roads. Textiles in Gaza were so famous, it's where we got the word gauze. It's just nonsense, and they just repeat it over and over again to try and drag you into arguments that distract you from things like the Nakba. That's the end of part one. Next up, we'll talk about genetics and we were here first.